Alright guys, Jake Rod Performance here. So, I'm going to do just a basic video on, troubleshooting wiring and soldering and things like that. I don't know, it seems strange to me to have to do a basic video like this, but, I'm finding out over the years that a lot of you guys, I don't really know this stuff, and the reason I bring this up is, so this is a trans brake solenoid, and we sell a lot of trans brakes, and really, I mean, this is probably the most common thing we sell and deal with a customer with electricity, but it seems people say it doesn't work, or they short it out, or it doesn't hold. They're not getting proper voltage to it, and they never really understand why this is a problem. And you say to them, well, man, check your connections, this and that. Oh yeah, the connections are good. The connections are good. It's easy. You just put the wires together and that's it. Well, it's really not it, because and I've seen so much bad wiring on cars, and I guess people just don't know these basic things. So it seems that the more basic the videos I make, the more people watch them. So if I seem to try to get too complicated with stuff, it gets less views. So I guess the real complicated stuff, I'm not really being as helpful as I am if I go back to basics. So let's talk about some stuff here. And all right, so let's say you're wiring something as simple as this solenoid here, and this is really simple. I mean, it doesn't even have polarity. It's just an electromagnet, and it doesn't matter which way you hook it up. So one wire is going to go to ground, and then one wire is going to go to a 12-volt source. It's going to go to, a lot of times, a button on the top of the shifter is where people normally hook trans brakes up to, but people do it different ways. They might have a toggle switch or something for it or whatever. However you want to set that up, that's completely up to you. So what I'm going to tell you first is, you should get a multimeter, and this is one I've had this sucker for over 20 years, and I bought this because I used to actually, in a former life, I was a heater technician, and I used to, troubleshoot heating systems in homes, and do service calls at night, people that had no heat in the middle of winter and stuff like that. So, one of the things you need is a multimeter to check the electrical part of it. And so, basically, I'm going to set this to ohms. And, this is kind of your friend here, because, and this has got an alarm, so if the leads touch each other, you can hear it, which I like. So, take your solenoid, first thing, nothing attached to it. Obviously, you can hear that it's got continuity. And let me change the range on that. So, it doesn't have a lot of resistance. So, right about 2 ohms is what the resistance is on this coil. Okay? So that's important to know that. Know that up front. And that way, if you're having a problem with this, where it's not activating, or maybe it's activating but it's being weak, this way, if you can check the ohms on your circuit, you know that right here it's 2 ohms. If you're through your wiring, you're getting, well, either A, it's open, that's a dead giveaway, you have a bad connection, or you're getting much more than 2 ohms. You know, maybe you're seeing 10 ohms or something, or you know, or more. You're seeing a lot of resistance. You know you have a bad connection somewhere. Just because wires are touching doesn't mean they're making a good connection. You know, and I've seen people use things like wire nuts and stuff, like an electrician would use. And you know, hell, I think I have a car that I see some wire nuts inside the dash. And it's not a car that I drive, it's a car that I got to restore. But, you know, let's talk about that for a second, wire nuts. Why not use a wire nut? You know, a lot of you guys right away, oh my God, that's Mickey Mouse. Yeah, it is Mickey Mouse. The reason you're not going to use a wire nut in an automotive application is because you're dealing with low voltage for the most part. And the main reason, I would say, I mean, that's one reason. The main reason, though, you're subjected to a lot of vibrations, and those wire nuts are going to loosen up over time. And that's really the biggest issue, is they're just going to come loose over time. So, you know, just to address, I know it seems silly, but just to address that, you know, why can't we use a wire nut? Some of you guys, you know, even if you think, yeah, I know that's Mickey Mouse, but man, I don't know, I don't really know why. Well, that's why. That's why it's a problem. But stick around with this video. We'll do story time on this one too. I just thought of a personal story here I'll share with you. I know you guys like story time, so that's all right. You don't have to admit it. I know you like it though. So all right, we're gonna talk about soldering. You know, I am not a big fan of crimp connects. You know, when any of my cars, if I'm having an issue with something wiring related, the first thing I do is I look for any crimp connects, which would be, you know, a connector like this, and somebody has just crimped it here. This is usually, almost every time, if I find something like this in the circuit, it's almost always an issue. And I'm not saying these can't work. If they're done properly and you have the correct tools, they can work. Let me see. I apologize. I've got 3 buildings and I never know where my tools are. Let me see if I have that crimping tool. Well, I'm sorry, that crimping tool is not here. All right. I can't show you that. I apologize. I should have been more prepared. But that's okay. I don't want to go over, I'm not going to discuss how to crimp things today. That's not what I want to show you. You know, I built an AC Cobra, and I made my own wire and harness. I bought one of these pre-made harnesses, and you know, those are all those are all crimp connected. But it's professionally done, and I'm sure it's fine. But I'm such a mental case, I just decided that, because I like soldering and I like doing wiring. I'm not going to tell you I'm like super good at it or anything, but I enjoy it. It's kind of therapeutical for me to just sit here and solder wires and take electrical tape and wrap harnesses and things like that. I just enjoy it. I'm kind of sick like that. So I decided to make all my own harnesses for that car. And so that's what I did. And I soldered everything. A lot of work. And but you know, the solder joints, you're never really going to have to worry about them. So here's just you know, it's not a high dollar soldering iron. And I picked this up at a hardware store. Now, the first thing you do with it, once you plug it in and it's hot, take your solder, and you're gonna solder the tip, okay? Which means you're just gonna get solder on the tip of it, because these get dirty. Now, this is just a damp rag. Normally you use a damp sponge, and then what you do is you just wipe this off with a damp sponge, or I used a rag, but whatever, it'll work. A sponge is better, but this will work. So, you have that nice, nice coat of solder on the tip of the soldering iron, okay? And, this stand used to have a little metal tray and a little sponge that fit in there, and that's what you use, but, the tray's been lost, the sponge is long gone, and, so I put a little, again, it's, we're going to show you how to do this on a low budget, but you do have to have a soldering iron. So the first thing here, a lot of this wire is very small gauge, and so if you try to take, like a pair of wire cutters like this, or dikes or whatever, and you kind of go around it, try to bite through the coating, and then you try to pull the end off to expose the leads, which I'm having a hard time with this. These are kind of dull, and probably a lot of you guys have ones that are dull, but what happens a lot of times when you do it like this, if you're not real good at it, you can actually damage these wires, and some of them might break off, or when they get flexed a few times, you may have kind of partially cut into them, and then some of the leads will break off. So these are the things that can give you a bad connection, okay? If you're not real good at that, I would highly recommend, this is a pair of wire strippers. These are very old, but this is a really nice set, and it's got different. It's hard to see anymore. It's kind of got some rust on it, but these things are probably 40 years old. I don't even know, but it tells you what gauge wire. So you would just put this in the appropriate spot, and it just automatically strips the wire for you like that. And it does it without damaging them, as long as you use the right hole, of course. If you go too small, it'll cut some of the wire. But if you're in the proper slot, this will pretty much guarantee you a nice, proper strip. Real easy to do. It's automatic. And that's that there. So I'd recommend a pair of those if you can get them. And they have some that are cheaper that are not automatic like this. They just, it's like a pair of pliers. I know you've seen them. I don't have a pair here, but they're a little bit more basic than this. And it's just a pair of pliers, and it has different holes. Same concept. And you just put the wire through and squeeze them, and then pull the wire through, and it'll strip the coating. It just doesn't have that automatic deal where it kicks it off for you. So let's say you want to just solder two pieces of wire together instead of using like a coupling or something that you crimp on both sides. If you're worried about that and making a good connection, or over time corrosion getting into it, and the connection just degrades over time, which happens. And like I said, when I'm troubleshooting, that's what I do, is check for those kind of connectors, because that's usually where my problem is. So just strip it, and then you can kind of put these through together like this. And this is just this isn't the best thing to use, but it's obviously what I've been using. It's just an old wooden door shim. Place I used to work had an electronics department where they used to solder a lot of wire and things, and they used to solder on a piece of mica. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically just it's a rock, and it's made into sheets. And they would just have a piece of mica on their bench, and they would use that because the mica is non-conductive, and it won't stick to it or anything. The wood's okay, but The mica is easier to clean up, and the mica is a rock. You won't burn into it. You know, like this wood, you'll burn into the wood. Not a big deal. I mean, I use it. I don't have a piece of mica anymore, but so just put your wire together like this and rest it on your whatever you got. Okay, and I hope you can see this. And just put your tip on there and add a little solder to it. And just watch the solder. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but when it gets hot enough, you'll see the solder just drop into it. Okay, and there you go. And just give that a few seconds to cool off. And that looks like it's cooled off enough. And there it is. And you have a solid connection here. Much more trustworthy than something that's been crimp connected. Again, not to pick on crimp connects. I'm sure somebody's getting frustrated. Well, I crimp connect all the time. You got the tools, it's fine. Yeah, I know. But a lot of people don't have the right tools. You know, they probably do it with a pair of pliers or something like this and screw it all up, and it never really makes a good connection. I don't know. You know, I don't know what's going on. So that's that. And what you can do to make this really professional is this is just a little kit I bought, and it's got different sizes of shrink tubing and things. And you pick a piece of shrink tubing, and sometimes you got to remember to put the shrink tubing in before you make your connection. That's important, but in this case we can slip it on after. And you just fit this over it like this. Now the best thing to use is a heat gun. And you know, I'll be honest with you, I got a heat gun now. I don't have it here. That's at my other building too. I keep moving tools around depending on where the projects are, but I'll be honest with you, you know, when I was young, I didn't have any money and I didn't have a heat gun. And what I used to do, and this works, just take the body of the soldering iron and just kind of, because the body is hot, and just kind of rub this along it, and you can see that starting to shrink up. And just keep doing this. You don't want to stay in one place too long because this will probably melt into the shrink tubing. But and there you go. It shrunk on there nice. And there you go. That's all you got to do. So you got a good solid connection there. And you know, same thing, you know, like you buy these at the automotive store, or you know, back in the days of Radio Shack and things like that, used to be able to get these things, but Radio Shack is no longer. But these are meant to be crimp connected, and what I do is I pull this plastic piece off like that, and then strip your wire just a little bit, and then just put this in that loop and just go ahead and solder that on. And same thing, you know, you're just gonna rest the tip of the soldering iron on the fitting, put a little bit of solder on the tip. That'll give it better contact with the fitting. And then when the fitting gets hot enough, it may take a minute because it's pretty big. There we go, it's starting to feed in now. And just hit it, you know, melt it up on the wire. And just push that solder in there. And you'll see that solder kind of get sucked in. Okay, there we go. Give it a minute to cool off. because you have more mass there on that fitting. Oh, I moved it too soon. But there we go. Well, it went crooked on me because I moved it too soon. I was being impatient. But so that's soldered on there, and again, you don't have to worry about, you know, if you got a good solder joint on there, that's going to pretty much last forever. So that's that. And if you need to, if you want to, you can take a piece of shrink tubing again, and you can slide this over. Well, this one will be too small. Go the next size up. And you probably have to use this one. I won't put it on, but, and then you just put this over there if you know, want to have, I don't know that I, you know, especially like on a ground, I wouldn't bother, but maybe on a hot wire you might care, but, because you won't have this plastic insulator anymore. So you can just put a piece of shrink tubing on it. And you know, I mean, if you're really in a bind, and you don't have any shrink tubing or whatever, you really want to pull boy this thing, use some electrical tape on it. You know, that's fine. That'll work. You know, gonna be better than Crimp Connect. I'll tell you that. So that's just kind of basic techniques for you. And you know, again, you know, going back to troubleshooting this, once you know, I'm not going to do it because this is a new solenoid. It's going to get sold to somebody. But, you know, once this is soldered on here and you solder your other end on it, you know, use your voltmeter. You know, if you're having a problem, or even if you're not having a problem, you just want to check it, you know, take your voltmeter, you know, in the ohm setting, put it here, you know, say this is connected, and then, you know, check it to here. You know, it's funny, it's trying to read something, but, you know, and make sure you're at that 2 ohms, that you're not getting extra resistance. That way you know you have good solid connections. I know this seems pretty basic and simple, and you might be laughing at me by now, but, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of people don't know this. And also in your voltmeter settings, you know, when you we're on ohms now, so multimeter. If we go to voltage, you know, check your voltage at your switch. You know you got about 12, 13 volts at the battery. See what your voltage is at the switch. You know, if you're only getting 8 volts or something, you know this solenoid is not getting. This solenoid really wants to get 12 volts. That's what it's designed to run on. So if you're only seeing 8 volts here, you're getting a lot of pressure, not pressure drop, I'm sorry, voltage drop. You know, you've got a bad connection somewhere, or maybe the size of the wire is inadequate for the length. You know, the wire gauge needs to be, you know, you need to have a thicker wire the longer the run is. And that's a whole another topic that, again, this is just a basic video, so we're going to stay basic here. So that's about it, guys. I'm not going to make this a long one. I did promise story time, so I'll tell you a little bit of a kind of a story I'm not real proud of, but you know, I was 15 years old, freshman in high school, and you know, my family was going through some hard times, man, and asking, you know, my mother or whatever to go out and buy me a soldering iron or something. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. You know, I wasn't going to get it. And, you know, I didn't have a job or anything at the time. And, you know, you're supposed to be 16 to work and all that good stuff. So if you see this character here, this is an old soldering iron. It used to have a collar around it, which is broken and gone, and the end of this broke, and I put some electrical tape on it. And the tip, this was the tip. I mean, I wore this tip down to the nub. I mean, there's almost nothing left to it. And I've had this soldering iron for 38 years. I did the math on this. It's kind of scared me, but I've had this guy for 38 years. You know, here's how sad I am. I'll probably repair this tip. I'll put it on the lathe and turn a new end on it, but just kind of nostalgia. But you know what? The reason I'm bringing this up is, you know, for 38 years, I mean, this thing still works, and so I got this soldering iron. I stole it from my high school. I took an electronics class, and well, that made it home with me one day, because I like to fool around with radios and stuff when I was young, and I was trying to get a radio working and things like that, and I needed a soldering iron, you know, so I stole that from my electronics class along with this stand here. You know, 38 years later, I still have this crap. You know, that's kind of crazy in itself. That might even be more crazy than me stealing it. You know, being young and stupid, and you know, justifying it like, well, you know, my parents pay taxes and it's a public school, so it's kind of my soldering iron. Whatever, you know. I mean, that's the things you want to tell yourself when you're young and stupid to justify your crazy actions. But yeah, I don't know. You know, maybe I'm not real proud of that story, but I shouldn't have done that. But you know, it is what it is. It's done now. It's 38 years ago. I'm still talking about it today, but you know, maybe as a punishment, I should have to give my AC Cobra to the school or something, you know, or you know, that would really suck. Or maybe at least buy them a round of soldering irons or something. I should maybe return this to them and bring them some brand new ones, you know. But yeah, I don't think I probably won't do any of that at this point. I'm hoping the statute of limitations, you know, the 7-year thing works on this, you know, so maybe I won't have to do any of that and really embarrass myself any further. But don't steal a soldering iron, you know. And please don't do that. That's not what I'm trying to tell you to do, but I am trying to show you how to use one. And I don't know, guys. I hope this video helped you somehow. This stuff seems really simple and basic to me, but you know, when you're dealing with this low voltage stuff, the connection's got to be really solid. And I think maybe that's the key to what people, you know, oh well, you know, it's crimped, it's touching, it's fine, all that sort of stuff. But you know, it may not be fine. It's got to make a really, really solid connection, or you're going to get significant voltage drop. You know, and things like this solenoid either won't work at all or it'll work very poorly. You know, I get these emails all the time, and I used to get these kind of phone calls all the time about, you know, any time a customer had something to do with wiring, it was a disaster. You know, just crazy. Oh, and I forgot to kind of go over this. So this is the solder, and this is what you got to watch out for. So what you want to get is what's called rosin core solder. And what that means is it has a flux in the middle of the solder. You know, I suppose you don't have to get rosin core. You could get a separate flux paste and flux the area and then solder it with a regular solder, you know, that doesn't have the flux in it. You could do that, I suppose, you know, like you would normally solder, like copper pipes or something. But, you know, I don't know what this stuff costs. You know, I've never bought a roll of solder. I had a roll of solder that was my father's. It was a roll very similar to this. And it lasted me, you know, practically my whole life. And I just finished that off when I was, not long after I finished the wiring harness for the AC Cobra. I was repairing some lights and things, and I finally ran out of it. But I don't know where I got this roll from. No, I didn't steal it, or maybe I did. I don't know. I don't know where it's from. So I didn't intentionally steal it. And then I got this little roll here. I don't even know where this came from. I don't know. Again, I didn't steal it. I promise you. I don't steal stuff anymore, but I learned my lesson. So anyways, so that's it for now, guys. I apologize if this is too basic, but I felt like it had to, I had to cover it. If you want to see more on electrical troubleshooting, or even more on soldering or anything, put it in the comments. I'll be glad to go, further into this, a little bit less basic if you need me to, and we'll go over more electrical troubleshooting. I can set some things up and set up, get a battery here and set up some switches and lights and whatever, and we can do more stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of that on the internet already. That somebody much better at this stuff than I can cover the subject matter better, but if you need me to go over it, I will. All right, guys, thanks for watching and listening to my dumb little stories there, and thanks for supporting the channel, and please share and subscribe to these videos and like them and whatever. Thanks a lot.